After World War II, the world was forever changed. The British Empire lost its superpower status to the United States, but not only was it no longer the #1 power, it was so impacted by World War II that now it found its massive colonial empire too expensive to properly maintain. Add the rise of independence movements and anti-colonial politics both at home and abroad, the British Empire would find itself losing its empire status quickly. Perhaps one of the biggest blows was the loss of its crown gem, the British Raj in India. Indian independence was secured by 1947, but it was a complicated situation. The British Raj was a complicated patchwork of not only dozens of cultures and languages, but 565 princely states. The British had used these differences to pit the populace against each other and then used the princely states to prevent a truly united India that could stand up to British rule. Classic divide and conquer. Despite this, independence for the Indian subcontinent was taking hold. But while a single independent India was desired by some, there were more people wanting a partition of some kind. The one major aspect that cut across most of the differences in cultures and languages was religion. Hinduism and Islam were the largest religious groups by far in India, and as a result, by the 1920s you had the rise of a two-state solution for Indian independence, a Hindu state and a Muslim state. With the Cold War on the horizon, the British kind of realized that a stable state of some kind would be good as an anti-communist buffer, but it wasn't going to happen. It seemed that the best solution was a two-state-ish solution. There were a few issues with this, to say the least. There were so many areas where the population wasn't as easy to split, but nevertheless, in 1947 a plan was worked out, and the Raj was divided into an independent India and Pakistan. Pakistan at the time included modern-day Bangladesh as well. And, there was also Sikkim until the 1970s, but that's its own story. The partition ended up being a disaster as the sudden new borders resulted in various cross-migration crises, resulting in over 1 million dead. Then, of course, India and Pakistan would quickly become hostile rivals and would have many wars between each other. In hindsight, was there a better partition in there somewhere? Absolutely not. There was not going to be a partition solution that made everyone happy and not cause a lot of problems. But I decided to see what would happen if you guys got to decide how the partition went down. A couple of weeks ago I announced the poll, and by the time I closed it, I actually got an even 3,000 votes. That's a nice number. Now we're going to look back at how you guys decided to redraw the map. The first question was about Punjab, a major area that had to be partitioned. One notable aspect was the Sikh community that lived within it, and they ended up being divided as well since they were the smaller major religious group. While the partition of the Raj was mostly along religious lines, several Muslim-majority areas were given to India. So aside from the historic partition, the other options were a true Muslim-Hindu partition, a linguistic-based partition, or a three-state solution with an independent Punjab for the Sikh community. 52.4% of you guys chose the three-state solution. Questions 2 and 3 involve major princely states which had Hindu-majority populations, but their ruling dynasty was Muslim. The princely states were given the choice of choosing between Pakistan, India, or just possible independence. For Junagag, they wanted to join Pakistan, but India believed it was too strategic to lose, so they funded a rebel government that overthrew the ruler and then had them join India. 74.7% of you decided that was the best course of action. The other princely state was Hyderabad, a very large princely state in South India. Hyderabad wasn't going to join Pakistan, but India still saw them as a potential threat, especially with their location. In addition, there was an attempted communist movement, and while it failed, a communist state in the middle of India could be its own threat as well. India ended up invading Hyderabad and annexing it in 1948. But in this case, 61.3% of you voted that Hyderabad would remain its own independent state. I don't know, maybe the British make India guarantee it or something? I don't know. Point is, it's happening. The most divisive question, however, was over the fate of Bengal. Like Punjab, Bengal was partitioned mostly along religious lines, but there were some movements hoping for an unpartitioned independent Bengal that was not a part of India or Pakistan. So aside from the 1947 partition, there was a true religious partition option, a fully unpartitioned option, or a slight compromise where India gets a small strip of land to connect it with Assam, but Bengal is still mostly together. And the compromise partition ended up winning out with 35.5% of the vote, with the religious partition close behind. The fifth question was about Sylhet, a Muslim-majority area in Assam that wanted to join Bengal and did end up doing so. 82.2% of you decided to keep it that way. As a fun wildcard event, I brought up the Chittagong Hills in southern Assam, which were these areas that were neither Hindu nor Muslim. They were mostly Buddhist and animist. Should they stay within the Indian subcontinent? Or perhaps they could be attached to nearby Burma? 77.6% of you thought that that was an intriguing idea and went along with it. Then of course, now that the new borders for Bengal have been decided, does it join Pakistan or become its own state? Well, 92.8% of you overwhelmingly agreed it should be its own independent state, which is not only the highest for this poll, I believe is a record for the entire series. The final question though was over Jammu and Kashmir, the most contentious area of the partition. Historically, this was a princely state that was pressured to join both sides, but after uprisings broke out, Kashmir reluctantly sided with India in exchange for military protection, but then Pakistan also intervened and the state ended up being de facto partitioned while being wholly claimed by both sides. For this survey, the ruler hasn't made his decision yet. Did you guys decide to do nothing and let history repeat itself? Did you decide to give it to Pakistan? To India? Well, 74.1% of you said none of the above and voted for the option to keep Kashmir as its own independent state. With all these choices in mind, while most of them were a majority supported option, the map still ends up being quite different. Now instead of a 3 state solution of India, Pakistan, and Sikkim, we now have India, Pakistan, Bengal, Sikkim, Punjab, and Kashmir. While I'm sure India and Pakistan will still hate each other, the source of most of their wars between each other was over Kashmir, so maybe there will be less fighting. On the other hand, maybe India still invades Hyderabad later on once the West can no longer guarantee their independence. Maybe Pakistan and India still invade Kashmir anyway. Even more interestingly, maybe Kashmir makes a border deal with China to give them land in exchange for protection against both India and Pakistan. That would be its own can of worms and interesting timeline. Bengal in theory is just Bangladesh happening 30 years sooner, but now that it has the big city of Kolkata and a more powerful standing, maybe it'll be a more assertive state. Maybe a more economically successful one. Like with the other videos in this series, there's no way of knowing for sure, but chaotic map changes are sure fun. Well, okay, in theory, usually in real life they're actually very terrible. If you like these scenarios where you vote on different partitions or peace treaties, be sure to comment below what you'd want to see next. In addition, you can guarantee more of these videos by becoming either a channel member or joining my Patreon. Patreon members even get to see full resolution partition maps both for this video and previous ones. As a bonus, I included a second map on how the subcontinent could look like hypothetically a few decades later. Every little bit of support from you guys helps keep the channel going. I'm Emperor Tigerstar, and now... Hey, remember that plush of the channel's mascot from a while back? Well, it's still available, and for the rest of August, you can now order one and get free shipping with the link below using the code GOINGBACK24. So be sure to get an Imperial Cat plush today to help support the channel. Also, come on, look at it. It's a cat in a pickle halba. I mean, who wouldn't want one? Come on.